Hey, it's Tina. I help experts turn their IP into certification and licensing programs. I want to talk today about the legal side of creating a certification or licensing program. It is essential to have your legal ducks in a row when you are creating a certification or licensing program. It is extremely risky to not consider and not be purposeful here with these things. So I want to share with you in a moment the three legal elements you want to have in place with your certification program. But first, let's talk about why it's so important. It really boils down to the promise and the protections. So the promise is about what is the promise you are making to the people you're certifying? And in turn, what is the promise they're making back to you as the certifier? The promise is being, when we're really crystal clear on here's what you can and can't do, and here's what it includes, and here's what it takes to get certified and maintain your certification, and what you'll have to pay, and certain standards you need to reach, and so on. We want to be crystal clear on what the promise is that somebody's getting up front. A common mistake that I'll see happen for people is if we're not clear up front with our certification, and then we're not clear with the people we're certifying, that can cause problems down the road. That can cause problems where people are saying, I thought I could do this, but I can't do this. Or what do you mean I have to renew? Or what do you mean I have to recertify? Or what's going on here? And just, it's so important to make a very clear promise to the people we're certifying. And of course, when you work through the 9 steps in my certification roadmap, that's exactly what we're defining is what is the promise you're making here. And then protection, we want to make sure you're protecting your IP. You're protecting what it is you've worked so hard already to create and put out in the world that you're trusting others to take and bring out into the world on your behalf. We want to protect your brand. And so without legal pieces in place, these key legal elements, your protections may be very little, if not any, right? So the 3 things we want to have in place, we want to have a clear agreement. We want to have trademarks. And there's something about trademarks that might be a little different for you that you haven't heard about yet, and copyrights. So the agreement, the certification agreement, again, includes the promise, essentially. It's talking about all the elements of what they're getting, what they're not getting, what can they do with it, the parameters to maintain certification, to earn certification, payments, renewals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of pieces that go into a certification agreement. I would actually say it's one of the more robust, I don't know if I want to say complex, but one of the more robust agreements that we might be creating for our business, for the various programs that we offer. But it is essential to have this in place before you start your first training, ideally even before you enroll your first people. Although if you've already enrolled some people and you're getting started, you can always circle back and do this. I had to do that with my very first certification program years ago. I did not have an agreement when people joined my very first OBM certification. And thankfully, I was okay. There was no major issues because I did circle back later and got folks to sign the agreement and such once it was created. But if we don't have those agreements in place and folks are out there using our stuff, you know, the people we certify, they're using it in the wrong way. They're doing something that doesn't align with your values or ethics or standards that you've laid out for them, you know, and you don't have any agreement, you have no recourse. You have no way to stop them from doing what they're doing. So the certification agreement, which includes all the licensing elements, is by far one of the most important pieces that you need for your business. Now, trademarks, there's something you may not be aware of. It's called a certification mark. And this will vary a bit, of course, from country to country, depending where you live in the world, and also depending where you may want to be filing trademarks. You might file locally where you live. You might file, you know, internationally, globally, like we've done. A regular trademark is about you and your business, right? I've got a name, or I've got a logo, or I've got something that I'm trademarking. And so I own that. The certification mark is about the people you're actually certifying. And it is a separate type of trademark that you will want to file for when you're creating a certification program. And again, I'm not an attorney, just to be clear, obviously, I'm not an attorney. You know, an IP attorney will very clearly and specifically be able to make recommendations on the various aspects of filing for these trademarks. But it's important to know that you will want to file for a certification mark. Certified OBM is a registered trademark. It's a registered certification mark for our certified OBMs to go out and be able to use it in the world. So very, very important. And last but not least is copyright. You want to file, ideally, you want to file all your materials for an official registered copyright. And again, this is about protection. If and where people are out there using your stuff, taking your things and using them, there is an element of copyright that's kind of implied when we put a little TM or when we have some copyright notice on our materials and resources we're sharing. But when it comes to actually protecting, if you need to take action with anyone around misusing any of your stuff, then it's a good practice to have everything filed copyright wise. And again, all of these things, you will need a good intellectual property attorney for this, a good IP attorney, and ideally someone who knows and understands your world. Right? There's IP attorneys who really get and understand, say, this running online training programs and certifications. There's other IP attorneys who might be really good at, like, how do you license materials into corporate and so on, right? So there's lots of attorneys out there. You need an IP attorney for sure. If you have an existing business attorney and they're not an IP person, then you'll want to look for someone there. And again, look for somebody who really knows and understands your world, so to speak. This is not the fun part of everything, right? Like getting all the legal ducks in a row. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel frustrating. You might even be a little annoyed that you have to spend money on some of these things, right? Like I like to say, this isn't always the fun part of building a certification, but I can tell you from experience that if we don't have these things in place, we have no protections and we have no recourse down the road. And I've had to utilize the protections and such that we've put in place multiple times through the life cycle of my certification. Not something that's fun to do or fun to deal with, but had I not had the right trademarks, the right agreements, the right things in place, frankly, I may or may not even have a certification anymore at this point, right? Things would have gotten so out of hand without the clarity of the promise and the protections in place with our legal agreements. So definitely something to consider. And if you are curious about starting a certification and haven't done so already, be sure to take our Ready, Set, Certify quiz. You'll find the link to that quiz here with this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.